Hello, my name is Hannah Chan.
My name is Phoebe Chan.
And my name is Rick Mechtel. The title of our performance is Wicked Silence, the War Against the Weak, North Carolina Eugenics Board. This meeting shall come to order. North Carolina legislature established this board in order to ensure the sterilization of all people who are considered sick, epileptic, or feeble-minded.
Why must the feeble-minded be sterilized?
Because they are a threat to society. We will not someone who's feeble-minded in a position of power. Likewise, we will not someone who's feeble-minded in the most important position of all, being a parent.
What is considered feeble-minded?
Anyone with a psychological IQ of 70 or less is considered feeble-minded. These are the first two sets of cases.
Before the rise of Adolf Hitler and Nazi Germany, several U.S. states waged eugenics war against their weak and disadvantaged. America legalized forced sterilization in the 1927 Supreme Court case between Buck versus Welch, where it ruled the Virginia statute of sterilizing unfit individuals and not violate the 14th Amendment.
Ultimately, 33 states had sterilization laws, the first one being Indiana, shortly followed by California. These laws targeted mentally retarded people.
North Carolina had the most aggressive program because it was the only state to establish eugenics board. The state began forced sterilization in 1929 and created its eugenics board in 1933.
The board was actually from 1933 to 1974, and consisted of 5 people.
Over the span of 41 years, 7,600 people were sterilized. The board created conflicts between personal freedom and the common good. These people lost their personal freedom in the name of protecting the greater good. Many of these victims did not consent to the procedures, for social workers threatened that if they did not agree, they'd be placed into an orphanage or would no longer receive state-provided welfare. North Carolina legislature did not completely compromise until 89 years later.
After World War II ended, most states concluded the eugenics programs. However, North Carolina, after a record low of 117 individuals sterilized in 1945, asked James G. Haynes to found the Human Betterment League of North Carolina. The League's goal was to increase the number of sterilizations and did so by selling the idea to the public through newspaper advertisements and pamphlets.
Hello, my name is Alice Shelton Gray, and I'm one of the lead members of the Human Betterment League of North Carolina. In 1957, the League sent out more than 575,000 pieces of mail promoting their sterilization program. This helped lead to the increase of women and African Americans outside the institutions being sterilized. In our literature, we told our readers that those who are feeble-minded were being entrusted with the most important job of all, the job of parenthood. Through voluntary sterilization, we protect the mentally handicapped men and women, the children of future generations, and of course, the community at large. For those who are feeble-minded are a burden to the states of North Carolina. Mr. Haynes also implemented IQ testing within all the schools to determine who else were eligible for these sterilizations. For sterilization is a protection, not a punishment. But truly, those who are feeble-minded were a burden to the state of North Carolina. The League's membership included several prominent members, including Ellen Black Winston, who was the commissioner of the North Carolina Eugenics Board and the chairman of it. One county in particular, Mecklenburg County, sterilized the most amount of people out of all of North Carolina after Wallace H. Crump, who was a sympathizer to the League's cause. He became the head of the public welfare program. Good afternoon, Mr. Crown.
Good afternoon, Commissioner Winston.
May I please have the records of the number of sterilizations in Mecklenburg County between 1955 and 1966?
Between 1955 and 1966, Mecklenburg County submitted 479 cases for sterilization, resulting in 403 sterilizations.
Splendid! Your program is stopping poverty from increasing within your county.
Absolutely. Back in 1945, there were many people living in poverty and on public welfare, but then I suggest that use sterilization in a form of birth control. Now, generation after generation are no longer being born mentally deficient.
That is absolutely correct. North Carolina has seen a significant increase in illegitimate birth rates among the poor, burdening the public welfare funds. Too many children born into poverty is not in the best interest of families and the government. So I supported sterilization and its expansion as a solution to illegitimacy and poverty, including revisiting the families of sterilization cases in order to determine if any other family members were eligible for sterilization.
And you saw the problem of African Americans burdening the public welfare system.
Yes. After Jim Crow laws ended, African Americans were allowed to receive governmental health and welfare benefits, resulting in the increased spendings in these programs. Social workers were given the authority to recommend sterilization candidates to the board. They targeted the African American population in order to prevent them from reproducing and growing in number. Therefore, the number of African American sterilizations increased by 99%. Through sterilization, we're easily able to target a burden to North Carolina government, the African American population.
Commissioner Winston, you made a valuable contribution to the public welfare system of North Carolina. I'll continue to admire your work.
Hello, my name is Elaine Riddick, and I was sterilized at age 14. On March 5th, 1968, I traveled to the Children's Medical Hospital to deliver my son. I woke up to bandages wrapped around my abdomen. Later, at age 19, I was informed that I was sterilized after trying to have more kids. Social workers forced my illiterate grandmother to sign an X on the authorization papers, saying that if she did not, I would be placed into an orphanage and she would no longer receive welfare. The board deemed me feeble-minded because I was pregnant at age 14. Right after I delivered my son, they sliced through my fallopian tubes and cauterized them. I lost my ability to have children, almost my life as well.
Next case, a Miss Elaine Riddick. 14-year-old female, psychological IQ of 75, feeble-minded.
Look, it says she's expecting her first child.
She must have been promiscuous and chasing after boys too much.
Promiscuous and chasing after boys, I was dragged and raped by a man 10 years my senior.
See here, it says that she is getting along so well that her school performance was poor.
Dr. Hilton McAndrew, who's a clinical psychologist, did an evaluation of me before my rape. He said I was doing above average work at school.
I believe your suspicions are correct. See here, it says that she is sneaking around and goes out and chaperone.
The only person that I had in my life was my grandmother, Miss Peaches, but with 15 children in the house, it was hard for her to look after all of us.
She's also feeble-minded. That means her child will be as well. Her sterilization prevents more feeble-minded people from entering into this world.
By your definition, someone who is feeble-minded has the IQ of 70, but I have the IQ of 75.
Have you reached consensus?
Yes, she should be sterilized after the birth of her child. This will ensure that no more children are born to this child who cannot take care of herself and can function in no way as a parent. By doing this, we're ensuring the public good of North Carolina.
So what am I worth? The children I did not have, could not have. What are they worth? They're priceless. I am not feeble-minded. I've never been feeble-minded. And they cut me up like a hog. The state never asked for my permission. I was raped. I was not promiscuous. And they deemed my child feeble-minded as well. I received a college degree, and my son is the CEO of his own company, became a millionaire by age 24. I felt like I didn't have a sex. For if I were a woman, I would be able to have children. It's the most humiliating and degrading thing another person can do to another person, to take away their God-given rights.
You see, Elaine Riddick was one of the first and one of the loudest stars to voice her sufferings on account of the North Carolina Eugenics Board. In 1974, she sued the board and accompanying social workers for unlawfully depriving her of her right to bear children. In 1984, she tried to bring her case before the Supreme Court. The court refused to hear that case.
The majority of the other survivors suffered in silence for decades. In 2002, when the Winston-Salem Journal published a series of investigative articles based on the research of Johanna Scowen that exposed the dark history of sterilization in North Carolina. It gave extensive background on the work of the Eugenics Board with detailed statistics and victim stories. This was a shock to the public and to government officials. Afterwards, Governor Mike Easley offered an apology. I was there on April 17, 2003, when Governor Mike Easley signed a law which ended forced sterilization in North Carolina. It repealed the 1929 law, which has not been in use since 1974, but the law was still on the books. What is the compromise to all of this? In 2013, the Office of Justice for Sterilization Victims, a division of the North Carolina legislature, put aside $10 million into a compensation fund. A total of $45,454 was paid to over 200 remaining survivors in a series of 3 checks. It was a joyful event to see that someone actually took the time and heard our cries and paid attention. No one should ever go through the pain and agony of not being able to have children. It's a God-given right. Be fruitful and multiply and fill the world of images of thyself. And that is something they took away from us.
Despite the offer of compensation, not all the survivors will qualify to receive it. Those who missed the application deadline or whose sterilizations were approved outside the state eugenics board were not compensated. North Carolina was the first state to compensate its survivors, followed by Virginia. California introduced a compensation bill earlier this year. However, 30 states have still yet to compensate its survivors. In the end, 7,600 people were sterilized. 85% of them were women. In the 1960s, 60% of them were African American.
The damages and scars caused by the North Carolina Eugenics Board still run deep today, with survivors carrying their memories with the rest of their lives. But this is only a compromise, as no amount of compensation can ever erase the suffering and bring back the lost generations of children eliminated through forced sterilizations. The legacy of the board has not yet faded.
Even though I was a victim of the North Carolina Eugenics Board, I refused to remain silent. After the Supreme Court refused to hear my case, I focused my energy in telling my story. I created the Rebecca Project for Justice, an organization that promotes life, dignity, and freedom for the people of Africa as well as the United States. I'm also a major advocate against modern-day eugenics. I want people to learn eugenics in school, for eugenics in America has not gone away. For example, in California prisons, 150 female inmates were sterilized without their consent in 2006 to 2010 in order to prevent future welfare costs of unwanted children. Also, the Supreme Court case of Buck v. Bell has never been officially overturned, making forced sterilization in America still legal today. I want people to learn that eugenics is a false science based off of racism. In North Carolina's war against the weak, there were no victors, only casualties. The greatest casualty is our humanity.